Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last day of Chinese Contenders for this season, Season 3, the last season of 2018, and it is going to be the last day that we're going to be seeing all these teams. Well, some of these teams, some of them, they're going to be going to the playoffs, but I am here and joined today by the lovely duo. Some call them V Squared, I just call them Volamel and Vals. How are you guys doing?
Worse now that you said that. Much worse.
Got a shout out, Gio. Come on.
My day has already been ruined.
Yeah. I mean, it's good, we were waking up early. Some of us have been up, catching some tier 3, not tier 3, some third party tournaments, catching up on some contenders. It's good. It's going to be a good day.
Well, it's going to get worse for one of you, I think, later, but we'll keep that till later. We got a little bit of a surprise later on in that third game. Make sure that all of you watching now stick around for that one because you're definitely going to want to be here for that. But the first game that we have here is going to be two teams that are kind of in they're already out of the playoffs, so really they're going to be playing for pride here, and that is going to be Laboratory versus Zenith of Optimism, or as we like to call them, Zoo. So both these teams, like I said, already out. And one of these things that we've talked about with both of these teams is they have one player each who we really kind of pinpointed as being a player. So one of them that Volamel you really liked was Mello. What can you tell me a little bit more about him and how he impacts the game?
So obviously within this kind of tank-centric metagame, hitscan proficient players haven't necessarily had the best performances so far. But from the few that we have, we've seen Assassin on T1W, and for Lab specifically, Mello has been a shining light for them. They've kind of adapted him as their fulcrum and trying to operate around him as much as possible. So you see them tend to run some interesting backline compositions. They might run something a little bit more or a little less mobile. Instead of running a Lucio, they'll actually run Upper Gita to kind of pocket his McCree or his Widowmaker, or maybe even a Soldier. He is a person to kind of keep your eyes on, maybe going into next season, because again, like Kenobi said, this is kind of just a pride match. They're looking to kind of showcase what they have in store for maybe a tryout or maybe a possible academy team position going into that first season of 2019, and that's going to be super pivotal for a lot of these players going into not even like the third season of the Overwatch League, but the mid season, which is going to be a super important thing for a lot of these Chinese teams that need to fill out some of their roster spots. So definitely keep your eyes on Mello. Mello's he's definitely got some heroes that he's very good at. Obviously the hit scan roles, but I want to see what else he's got.
And going to the other side for Laboratory Vals, there is one player who kind of stands out above all the rest based on his hero pick, and that is going to be Seeds. And Seeds is this player who really likes himself some Hammond. So can you tell me a little bit about Laboratory and how they try and play around Seeds' favorability for this pick in Hammond?
Yeah, Laboratory have been one of the more interesting teams to watch throughout the season. They like to run a lot of triple DPS, sometimes even quad DPS. But one of the most consistent teams we've seen is Seeds. Their main tank is almost exclusively played the Wrecking Ball. And give them credit, there have been a couple of times where it's worked well. The team have been able to play around it, successfully follow up on the pile drives. But overall, it's been a bit lacking. We haven't seen the necessary flexibility we've seen of any of the main tank. It has basically just been the Wrecking Ball, and the team he's struggled to kind of play it to max potential itself, and the rest of the team has struggled to play around it. And it's definitely been a sore spot for Laboratory all through the season. So against a slightly easier opponent than some of the teams they've faced, maybe Seeds can have a better performance today, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. If Seeds can maybe rein it in a bit, stop making so many mistakes we've seen so far, that might pave the way for a little bit more successful Lab.
Now we do, it's fine and dandy to talk about Laboratory to the ends of the earth, but, Zoo, they have struggled a bit this season. That's something that, we can't sugarcoat. It's the numbers don't lie. Now, again, we can talk about Laboratory and how they're looking for, positions in academy teams and potential, contenders teams coming next season. But this Zenith of Optimism is doing that same thing. They've taken a lot of this information that they've kind of jumped into this kind of tier 1 amateur division play, and I'm looking for them to see improvement coming into that next season. They have a decent enough break. We have next winter coming up within a couple days that they are going to be qualifying for. It's basically all of the contenders teams again. So there is not a lull in Chinese Overwatch, which is really cool because you can start to really see teams progress. So definitely keep your eye on Zoo to try and gel a little bit more. They've played a full season of contenders. They're going into next, hopefully. Then we'll have season 1 of 2019, the requalification there. So anything's game there. We could see some roster swaps, so it's anybody's game.
Yeah, it is worth noting quickly that while Lab has basically been the same roster all throughout Contenders, Zoo have mixed it up a lot. We've seen some new additions coming through, still trying to solid a bit, so something to work on over the next couple of weeks.
And we're going to see if they can work on it, because we are going to be going into our first map, which is going to be Lijiang Tower. So I'm going to leave you all in the capable hands of the dashing and daring duo of I Hold Shift and Ryan Central. Guys, take it away.
Pardon me as I hit the mute button on accident. Dashing and daring, I like that. It makes it kind of feel like Evil Knievel. I don't know about you, Ryan. Are there any like famous English stuntmen that I don't know about? Because obviously in the North American scene, we've got the man Evil Knievel, which I'm just going to associate with because why not?
The only one that comes to mind is Piers Morgan with some of the stuff he says. Like, he just wants to, like, maybe go punch him in the face. Like, that's the only one that I can think of. But we are going to be at Lijiang Tower. Laboratory versus Zenith of Optimism. Two teams that have lost all of their matches so far. The only upstat, really, is that Laboratory have one map win against TSL. Other than that, they have lost every single map that they've played. So these are definitely the two worst teams in Group A, facing off against one another. So this could be pretty scrappy, but both teams have shown elements of being able to play some good Overwatch. So let's see that in action.
We sure will, and wearing the green will be Laboratory coming out and against Zenith of Optimism having not won a map yet. Would love to change that here, as you mentioned, two of the bottom teams in the group, and setting things up for Zenith of Optimism. They've kind of already split themselves a little bit with Asfara in the sky from Sky Show, actually, putting on a show from the Airborne Arena. There's a lot of poke happening, and no one has even taken a look yet at the far. That's going to have to change, and it really comes down to how and where will it occur, simply because there are just no actual counters for Zenith of Optimism unless they can get a hack off with the Sombra. But the numbers already funneling in for Laboratory, and with that will come the pressure onto the point. The Hammond trying to work his way in, just swinging around from left to right, kind of in a clockwise motion. The Sombra will be turned on to in the back line, but translocating away. They will find the first pick onto the Mercy, which will do well for Zenith of Optimism when it comes to winning the sustain battle. And yeah, you can already see it. Oh, the frontliner of D.Va being taken down. The Winston will try to even things back up, but will immediately get jumped away as Since will fall. The first point will favor Zenith of Optimism.
And speaking of favouring Zenith of Optimism, they are playing much more of a tanky goat composition. While Skyshow has the right idea and played far ahead, they got picks, but it just took them so long to get the rest. So Zoo were able to just outlive them. Basically, just like a couple of picks, they were fine and got the run, and EMP is ready to be used and looking for a target.
Oh, and it finds the back line, which actually consists of mostly the frontliners. They were just kind of staggering themselves behind, and oh, Skyshow drops the barrage, but nearly almost falls off the map. We'll get a concussive blast onto Ian outside the map, but will be an even trade, actually, just a 1-for-1. So we're looking at a 5-on-5 action happening on the point. Still in control for Zoo, getting above 50%. The resurrection will come into Mellow as he does find some space to get it off for free. The self-destruct also taking down Lazy, so if Lab is going to make a move at this, it's going to have to be now, and it looks like with all the damage coming out of this rocket launcher, again from Skyshow uncontested, they will get that damage you mentioned a little bit more easily confirmed and a little bit quicker and more timely, which will allow the retake to occur, but again, it was 68% for the side of Zoo.
I guess when you're looking at both of these teams, it's much easier to defend than attack. We see that a lot in Control, even with some of the bigger teams, right? If they take the point first, they have such a big advantage, but once they lose it, it's very difficult for them to take it back. So there is a good amount of ultimates to be used on either side to keep themselves going, and already we want to see Zoo trying to take this point and be aggressive.
Well, Zoo popped the rally, but a lot of the frontliners had just walked right away. The EMP comes down, then on the barrage to follow up will be good for a DMAC plus a kill into the Brigida. That will thwart this attack potentially for the side of Zoo, and yeah, the kills do come through, even though there is a DMAC happening on the side of Lab with a as well as Zenyatta to didn't fall. And just the poke is just too strong. And at some point, do you wish that Zoo would just switch to something that had a more kind of rock, paper, scissors counter to this Pharah?
To an extent, I think Cloudy's just not really focused in Skyshow at this point. Did do it in the first engagement. EMP is ready on this attack, and they're aiming towards looking potentially to get a Zenyatta here.
And actually, it's almost just a solo wall. Does now final. The Winston will dive on in, but the D.Va also a part of that EMP will be DMAC. Cloudy will throw out a translocator, but doesn't have to use it as of yet, as he's got himself, again, that wrecking ball right into his face. And a nice play there from Winston to move on in, and a little bit of a hack again onto Mercy. Can they follow up? Diving in was the D.Va of Non-High, but won't be able to fully commit for the kill, so the Mercy will live to tell the tale. But Zoo, with the retake, now sitting above 78%.
you're looking at Laboratory, you're looking at Sins, who's playing Zenyatta.
Yeah.
There's no Brigitte to give him any rally armor. There's no Lucio to boop away targets and to peel. It's just a Mercy. So he's very much out in the open. But saying that, Laboratory are coming in fairly aggressive and they're getting picks.
Sky Show again from right over above, and they do take down Ian before the sound barrier can help save his life. And might be a similar fate for the Brigitte trying to hide behind this pagoda, a little information booth, and Sky Show will be able to track down the shots to find the kill. And now potentially a barrage. Will they even need it? 99% self-destruct comes out. It looks like everyone will just mind their line of sights and come in. Nice airborne shots. Will connect with Lazy, who is trying to run circles around what is his makeshift roller rink of this capture point. And at 99%, it will be retaken. So potential for one more, maybe two more fights for Zoo to retake and maybe find the win.
Potentially, it's very much neck and neck. There's some big ultimates on Zenith's side though. That EMP should be massive, but Laboratory have their own. Transcendence available on Zoo that are now going to be attacking, so they have that aggressive foothold. But we see Mello try to go on the aggressor here, looking at getting his head again.
Yeah, just sitting right on top. It will be a solo ult on top of him, and with that comes the easy takedown of the Zenyatta, who will not be able to get the Transcendence out, and this will likely be the last fight, as we do have numbers favoring the Laboratory as they are moving in to try to find the last couple of cleanups at the point. The rally has been used, but the barrage will be also thrown out, but actually immediately take it down from Nanhai. The Bunny Blaster doing well there, but at the same point, the kills just still favoring the side of Lab as they will have control of as far as the numbers on point. No frontliners left. The minefield comes out, and a little bit of a boop around as they try to track down this very pesky Lazy. And the Transcendence will help finish off the last bit of health pool that was getting low, and just retargeting onto the Winston will finish this one away. The Primal Rage will come through, but the Discord Orb is just allowing too much damage to come, and with that, overtime fades away, and Laboratory will take the first point, 100 to 99.
They started off on the right foot. They were able to get that pick onto Zenyatta, and since then, Zoo looked a bit lost. I'd say both teams are leaving their Zenyatta players out to pasture, just out on their own, not really too much help. That when a Sombra comes in with an EMP, the team isn't there to back up their Zen players that lose, the majority of their health. They're going to go down fairly easy. So that's a big issue that both these teams seem to be suffering from, potentially even suffered throughout the whole of the season. But I think both Sins and Ayan are going to be sat there thinking, guys, please keep me alive. I dictate this fight with who I discard in Harmony. Please just don't let me die to really silly stuff at this point.
And he's doing, all he can, right? He's sitting as far back away out of the line of sight as much as possible, but there's just very little spy check happening from either team, actually. No one trying to do a 360 with the D.Va to try to find a little bit of a decloaking device, I guess you'll call it, as we will switch over to Night Market, and Sky Show will still come back in with Meow with that pharmacy combo. Trying to dive on in would be Seeds, but he will be chased out, and the Kogo will actually try to pull this one through. The Winston trying to dive into it, but won't be able to find quite the kill. Lazy will be the first blood in this exchange as he will be eliminated by that, again, that pharmacy combo that has been uncontested for the first map. It looks to be the same here in our second environment. And with numbers on point, they're going to try to find a way to just win this one flat out. Will Zenith Optimism, and actually they will be able to do so as they find all of the front line of the side of Laboratory. The point will go into their capture, and we're just looking for a little bit of cleanup at this point, and the Zelta will be able to move on in with the Brigitte and flail whip a couple of players before finally coming back to point with a rally.
That Zelta shield bashing the Zenyatta there had so much oomph in it. I felt it. But Lab, again, coming in with a Pharah, getting the first pick, and still losing the first point. Which really, you would feel that, especially when you're running into a composition that is this compact, this tight together with tanks. As soon as you lose one tank, like a Lucio or Brigitte, that should be it for the rest of the fight. I think there's an EMP very much going to be used early by Lab here. They want to try and get this pick. They get a point.
Whoa, actually coming back to the fight was Cloudy, able to return the favor to Mello. As again, you talked about wanting to try to save the Zenyatta. That's exactly what happens there. And now Zenith Optimism with the numbers will pop the Transcendence as the Zenyatta lives, and that'll help keep them on point for just a little bit longer while the Wrecking Ball is being annoying. The Valkyrie as well, also being equally pesky, will eventually be tracked down, and both will fall. So Zenith Optimism will find a retake mid-fight, and will put them up to that 33 and counting.
That was a very weird engagement because you had Milo in the backline EMPing whilst the rest of Lab moved on to the point to try and take it in really sneaky fashion. So, it's all right. It's a gimmicky strategy to take the point in that sort of way, but they used EMP, which is typical. Milo going down, and they're doing it again. They're just going in for point. But this time I feel like Zoo are ready to sort of quell that surprise.
Yeah, and with that Tesla cannon, but Winston able to find Skyshow before he could fully escape, and Laboratory will have to back up a number of ultimates, most notably though for them to potentially look for the retake. The Transcendence, the Minefield, which will give a lot of aerial control when it comes down to making the point a little bit more of an obstacle course, and of course Skyshow will be really holding on to that barrage and will be up in the air, hitting pretty much all the way at the top of the skybox, and we'll need to find a way. But again, look how spread out Zoo is. The rally might bring them back together, but that rally is actually just kind of used as almost a solo rally. Not a lot of players getting the armor, and Skyshow will let the barrage whip. The sound barrier comes out just a bit late as Zelta and Ian will fall away, and now it will be a full re-switch to the point for Laboratories. They do have the numbers. Oh, although I say that, EMP comes out with the self-destruct, but it won't find any eliminations. It was a decent idea to try to contest it. Not exactly the most winnable fight in the world, and the kills will come on through. Although Seed Sog, he actually just not able to find his way back up. Tries to pile drive up to that high ground ledge, but it's not gonna make a difference. Laboratory, they come back in with the numbers, and they will retake just at the nick of time as it was at 99% for Zoo.
I really like the synergy that we had happen between Skyshow ulting and Synth using the Transcendence to keep him alive. Granted, Synth almost has another Transcendence, so he's getting a good amount done. Lab do take the point, but it is 99% again for Zenith of Optimism. And EMP looking again early to be used, but there's so many targets in that room, it might be quite difficult to pull them apart.
And I don't know if that EMP hit. Yeah, it didn't. The pillar was enough of a line of sight break for Ian to stay alive and away from that EMP, which means the Transcendence comes out immediately. Now looking for a way to put this one back through his bins as he throws out a self-destruct. We'll take down Lazy, and on top of that, Synth was able to find the DMAC. The Minefield is also in play, and Laboratory, on the back end of a very misguided EMP, will still find a way to win the fight.
Yeah, by dedicating more ultimates to it, it was very much a case of, do we have it? Okay, we're going to use it. So they do have a barrage coming up fairly soon on Skyshow, but they really need to show a bit of discipline not to just spend it straight away, right? They need to be very careful. We already see the Winston going into the backline, trying to find a pick onto the Zenyatta, but Lab, very cleverly, are just backing up, making some space for themselves. With Zoo playing that kind of composition, Skyshow can very much just sit back and just spamming rockets from a distance. He has his ult. It's just a case of doing as much damage as possible and getting those picks.
Coloring outside the lines a little bit, just a little bit outside of the extent of what is the landable part of the map. We'll try to move on, and he again still has the barrage, looking for a way to potentially funnel this towards that front courtyard. He will swing around, and there's still no opening picks as of yet. The sound barrier comes out, and now all of a sudden Steams has been taken out, and oh goodness, Bins almost gets knocked off the map from that shield bash from Zelta, but he will still be DMAC'd and focused down immediately as Zoo will find a way to retake, and now it just comes down to the potential overtime play. The barrage used in desperation, the EMP thrown out a little bit more haphazardly, not gonna make much of a difference as Mello will come in with one of his own, and just in the nick of time comes the wrecking ball, but not gonna make a difference. A 2-on-6 rarely favors the players with only 2, and it will be Zoo evening things back up with 199 of their own. 1-1 we go, Ryan.
Because they were at 99%, they could just sit with the ultimates that they had. They dedicated 4 to that final fight, whereas, as we sort of pointed out with Lab, they used effectively everything in droves, meaning that they didn't have much for that final fight. So they were just sort of out-ulted at the end. The ult economy was definitely not in their favor, so Zoo had the freedom to use a good portion of stuff without even needing it. They just threw in an EMP at the end just for, like, giggles, really, more than anything. I just didn't mind. But now we are going to very much a tanky place. This fits Zoo, who have been playing these tank comps pretty much non-stop. Granted, they are running a D.Va in their lineup, they're running a Sombra, which is interesting. And Lab just got a very traditional composition of goats, but with a Zenyatta instead of a Moira.
That is interesting to see, and we'll see if that Discord Orb can be placed on Nabokolo, and it looks like he will be taken out very quickly, able to get a little bit of sustain, but again, very low on HP. Seeds, can he find an opportunity? The Fire Strike will connect through the barrier, and that'll be enough for them to move on forward. This will be the first point going Lab's way. If they can find a couple extra picks, it would be great, but they won't be great at that opportunity. Mello will just farm up a little bit of charge and go to the plasma poke game that Zarya is so infamous for here on Control Center.
It was a really good Fire Strike to sort of win out that fight, but since it's, you know, a good portion of his way to having his ultimate, so showed how much damage he was able to do and keep his team alive, just getting that one pick. You could see really turn the fight for the Zenith of Optimism. They're slowly going to make their way onto the fight to try and get a pick. Both teams played a very high pressure game here.
Melo's still at high charge though and wants to find a way to get this ultimate charged up. He did full 181% to that Graviton Surge, although very low as Seeds. He will get shield bash while his shield was down, and then the rocket flail coming out as well, but able to trade away the Reinhardt is a subtle laboratory. Can they find a way to lock in the rest of this fight? The Graviton Surge comes up, but immediately the Transcendence is popped and the Sound Barrier. Both actually supports being used at the same time, which is unfortunate considering that Vince was throwing a self-destruct into that pull, and that will be enough to find 2, and with those numbers, Laboratory will push on forward with the rally and give themselves a full team wipe.
I'd say it's a disaster really for Zenith with Optimism. Basically, they used both of their support ultimates, and still 2 people died to the Diva Bomb, a Sound Barrier or Transcendence. Even both together couldn't keep them alive, so that is a big loss for Zoo that used 2 of their biggest ultimates in quick succession, and it amounted to not much. Lab building up their ultimates slowly. They do have some stuff backed up, and again, aggressive coming out of Zoo, ready to use an F-Shot.
Now it will be an Earthshatter used for Makoa, but not able to find as much as I think he was hoping for. So we're looking at a way to potentially find this Reinhardt down as he is a little overextended. Melo comes from the backhand side, a little bit of a pinch coming through, and a Wrecking Ball switch for Seeds as he's already got himself built up to a minefield, now just taking a little bit of a wide around. The Transcendence also being recharged. The rally is coming up for Zoo as, again, they're using a lot of support at the same time. Graviton Surges traded, but again, you can see those health bars fading so quickly for all players wearing white. It will be the Reinhardt coming back in, but another nice pile drive coming through will allow Meow to come on in, and again, just holding W and left mouse button, and we'll actually be able to find the little mini shield bash stun mid-charge for the Reinhardt of Zoo, and that will allow them to, again, find the numbers. Seeds has been absolutely punishing on this Wrecking Ball. Not traditional as far as what we normally see, but he's finding a lot of very successful pile drives. The retake comes through for Lab, and they're looking to put this map away.
Well, look how quickly he's getting ultimates. It shows exactly where he's finding his stride, just rolling into tanks, pile driving them, just being a complete nuisance. And Lab, just sheer force of will, were able to take the point, not dedicating any big ultimates there, but just keeping themselves alive with the current onslaught. Now Zoo, again, trying to push it aggressively. They've made 34% on the point, but that's really all they're going to make. Lab closing in on getting 99% though.
Lab will pull out the self-destruct to start things off. Won't find any eliminations as everyone is a little bit of break sight, but using the rally to potentially find this one through. And now a Graviton Surge on top of a minefield. It's going to find a lot of damage, and the Transcendence also being popped for Lab to make sure nobody falls. That will be the end of this one. A very smooth play here from Laboratory. They just need to clean up the last couple of players stray on the point, which they will do successfully as soon as they can read DMEC out non-high and trying to thrust away, but will be DMEC at the pinnacle of that thrust. Taken down, and the overtime will surely fall away here shortly, and it will. Laboratory able to take map number 1 into 2-1 scoreline.
Did you see the little bottom third of like be unique and be yourself on the Laboratory logo? It's great. I love it so much. Both teams, well, Laboratory coming on top in the end, but both teams making a good amount of mistakes. It's very much one of those areas where if you're wanting to learn and understand pro Overwatch, then definitely watch these teams and where they could perform better. A lot of double support ultimates being used, ults dedicating into fights that were already won. Just kind of refusing to give up some fights in some cases. It is scrappy, but both teams, I think the Wrecking Ball is a really nice touch coming out of Laboratory, and it's working very much in their favor with what they're trying to do, and also what Zoo are trying to do themselves. It's forcing them to be a little bit more uncomfortable in those comps.
Yeah, and I like the look. You know, changing it midway through, the Reinhardt was a problem for the side of Zoo, and we'll take a look at some of the replays as we go over to Sky Show, and the gang is, again, he was able to find that little concussive blast right as soon as the Ian had popped the Transcendence, and Mello as well. Again, singling out Ian. He had a very rough first map there, Ryan.
It was like very rough, but I think both teams have really shown that they could easily take this. I would be incredibly surprised if Laboratory go on from here to take the full 4-0 win. I think both of these teams show promise, and we know Control. Control could often be the game where people, it tends to be scrappy, try to work out themselves, try to warm up, try to work out what's going on. Now we're going to a hybrid map next, either Hollywood or Numbani, and that's going to open up a lot of different strategies, and who knows, Zoo might be able to turn it around from here.
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's kind of one of those things, especially when you're running goats, you give an inch and it can turn into a mile very quickly. But we'll be back in just a moment with map number 2 just after this break. Welcome back, our lovely, if not astute audience. My whole shift, Ryan Central back with you. We are going into map 2, again, the hybrid style map, and we will be on Numbani. And again, we've seen a lot of really wild things on this map here, Ryan, with 2 teams that are out of the playoffs. I'm secretly, if not a little bit loudly, hoping that we're going to see some more of that awesomeness coming in this time around.
I mean, it went very much to the end, right, for both teams. 99% to 99% on every single map. And it went to the final of a best of 3. So you would assume that that would continue. Like, it did come out with Laboratory winning Lijiang Tower, but not towards any... Like, Zoo played really well to the point that they almost took it themselves. If not a minor of issues, but to be honest, both teams were making mistakes. So it's very much open for either team to take Numbani. And looking at compositions already, we're seeing Laboratory very much going for a traditional dive, but the Ana Brigitte is a very interesting defense lineup. Basically, since it's going to be doing all the work, Meow is going to be on bodyguard duty for what Zenith of Optimism are bringing out, which is very similar. We're watching Dive in 2018, very much 2019 almost.
I was just going to ask you, Ryan, when was the last time we saw not one, but 2 Genjis playing up against each other here in China? I don't think that we've seen it yet, at least not that we've broadcasted together, and it will be Zelta getting a little bit of a damage boost as he is trying to poke away this right-hand side. Perspectively, the Flux comes out and will again keep all of this front line at bay for Laboratory, and on to point they go, but immediately trying to counter this is Seeds. He does get shield bashed, and the damage is, not quite there. Is actually in the meantime, Mello is in the back line of Zoo, able to find all of the support line, so things went terribly wrong, terribly quick. Zelta is still alive, but it's just a mere inconvenience at the moment as the defense will be successful. Talking about that play there from Mello, able to find the back line for free.
Well, Siege jumping in as well as Wrecking Ball was able to just completely disperse what Zenith of Optimism wanted to do. They just lost that sort of search priority. They got a pick onto Sky Show that I think was a bit overzealous with the Doomfist. Zeus spotted it, and effectively the Winston Diva all dived onto him. He went for the same position as he did now, but manages to get the pick onto Cloudy this time. But we didn't really get to see Zoo follow it up. So the Winston tried to go in, but they're just going to back out and take their time a little bit. So, like, that was a big opportunity missed for Zoo that will make progression on the point, but haven't even got a third yet.
And that's a little bit of trouble as Mello does have a blade available. No nano boost yet for Sin, but he's pretty much close. He'll get it mid-fight, and he's vastly ahead of Ian, who again melted very quickly. Zelta will find a swift strike right through Sky, and now the blades will both be utilized for both teams. The boost did come out for Sin, so Mello will actually find Ian at the right exact moment. That's the only kill we get from it. The EMP also being channeled in, and the self-destruct on top of the point will allow Zoo to actually find a lot of space right around where that payload has sit tacit. But again, there were a couple of members of Laboratory who stayed alive, and that will be able to swing Zoo away from the point once again without getting a tick.
I let the Brigitte here actually for Laboratory. Duraldi kept everybody alive. The boot back made sure that Zelta couldn't get any form of progress or picks towards his Dragon Blade. So a big, again, opportunity missed. We're starting to see Zoo making their way onto the point, getting picks, but Laboratory are just looking out for each other and able to get those picks. It's a very much a get each of us backs kind of composition.
And now Ian popping the nano boost onto a very enraged Winston, who will be slept in the back line, letting both of those channels going through. And so the very good play from Sins to negate any aggressions that came through. And now focusing the Winston, a rocket punch will keep Devo away from his other frontliner as well. And that will be just one more uppercut to finish things off. Seismic slamming into the backline. Really good left to right play from Sky Show as he's all over the map, which you like to see on Doomfist. We'll try to chase down Ian, who's got nowhere to go. And yeah, a little midair, a couple of pistol, I don't even know what to call, just projectiles in the face. We'll just keep it at that, as Ian had no way to respond to it, sleeping down. And with only a minute left, Zoo looking a little desperate at the moment. Still there, Ryan?
Sorry, my bad. We have EMP on the way for Zoo, but they need to try and make some progress now. They don't want to be full held here, as that would spell pretty big disaster in Laboratory having a big advantage. There's so many ultimates on lab side too. They have their own Dragon Blade. They just got released and they're going to use it because they know that Zelta's Dragon Blade is ready. Saying that though, Skyshot did get the pick onto him, so they have to wait yet again.
And again, this is just early picks happening. About every other engagement that Zoo wants to push through, Sky Show has put it on its heels by just taking away one member immediately. So now we're just down to 20 seconds. Last opportunity for Zoo. And available, they will have a number of ultimates. But the blade from Mello will come out first, trying to find the backline. That will be traded with a blade of their own for Zoo, trying to get into the backline of their own. EMP also being used to help in the effort. And that will be enough to take down Sky Show and Sins as well. So with that come numbers for the side of Zoo. This is the exact moment they need to find it. It will happen in overtime if they do take this point, and it looks like they will, as there is a boosted Winston on the point, helping try to keep this Genji at bay. He will be very annoying, but jumping right after him is Makoto, and that will be enough to find at least its first 2 picks, and it looks like that will actually be the full point. So checkpoint A finally getting converted in overtime. We'll see a minute, pardon me, 2.5 minutes added to the clock as we will go to stage 2.
And not a moment too soon, getting a quick replay of exactly what Mello was able to do, dashing through so many targets, and I'm curious to see how much he managed to build his ultimate in this case, but honestly didn't really need it, was just able to sort of shore up stuff. But we do see the payload moving on up for Zoo, and Mello 72% on having his ultimate, so Laboratory still have a good amount of stuff ready to use, and they have the potential to get picked without ultimates anyway with the Doomfist or a Genji. But Zoo have built up quite a good amount in the time. They used a lot of ultimates trying to take the point, but now they're well on their way.
Also, the shot comes out and will ring the bell of Cloudy and Ian, who will be taken down from the explosion radius. Trying to chase down the Winston, he is a little bit over-aggressed, and a very good turn of focus for Laboratory to find a 3rd kill in that exchange. And again, starting things off well. And you know, Ryan, this is really interesting because if you were to just look at the first 99% of that initial capture point, it was vastly in Laboratory's favor. But all it takes is one moment for Zoo to convert, and it just kind of comes down to when that happens. In their fashion, it seems to always happen in overtime or late. And that's something that really does need to change as they look to finish off not only this season, but get into next.
They're going to use the Valkyrie to just keep themselves topped up in this fight. Really, the pressure is building, and it forces them to do stuff. The Dragon Blade does come out, and it is going to get a pick onto Ana.
And again, with that Ana going down, the big burst sustained that they need to keep these frontliners alive will not be there. So, Ryan, we will again see an early push be once again thwarted by Laboratory, and Zoo just has to back up with their 4 players that survived the exchange, although the Winston does get taken down late. So a little bit of a stagger. We're down to just about 45 seconds on the clock, and again, we're getting to desperate modes. This has to be one more fight plus a pretty sustained push to get all the way through.
But there's an EMP Dragon Blade waiting on this attack too. They just need to take the time, make sure that they can cover as much space as possible before they do pull the trigger on these ultimates. But we are going to see Siege bringing out the Wrecking Ball. He's going to have the minefield ready, and the Nano Blade is primed.
And it will come through. Brigitte will be the next target in hand, but able to shield bash, so keeping Zelda a little bit at bay, although he will be able to wall climb and stay alive for what is by far way too long. Siege will finally get the pile drive kill on top of what looked to be just around his outside area. And now with all those kills coming in, we just got 10 seconds left, and if they can find a couple staggered kills for Laboratory, they will surely cease this payload from moving any further. But a little bit easier said than done as the rocket punch into the Diva will come out, trying to get her out of mech as much as possible, and it will be successful to do so. And we'll be able to find another rocket punch into the face, and how about that, another seismic slam also to find the last bit of damage, able to find the meteor strike onto point. And with that minefield being there, Tracer's going to have a very difficult time dashing from side to side as Cloudy has switched the desperate times. And well, it will stall out as we anticipated. Laboratory will hold on to only a point and about a half on the push here on Nubani.
Really well played from Lab on the defense. They managed to hold on to the first point for as long as physically possible. Again, just out-ulted in the end. But just the way that they picked their fight on the second point as the payload was moving along, we saw Zoo dedicating ultimates like Valkyrie and Dragon Blade early, and then it was just a case of Lab finding what ultimates they had, stringing them together to take Zoo off the point. And from there, it was quite easy for them to sort of full hold it, or at least not let it go too far and towards the second checkpoint. So really well played on this defense, but it does ask a lot on how they plan to make this composition run on their attack, especially the Wrecking Ball.
You know, we saw the Wrecking Ball again on Control Center back, if you're just joining us on Lijiang Tower, and even here, Seeds has made the Wrecking Ball a huge, impactful hero, and it just seems to be one of those things that he bides his time when his team has ultimates available that can initiate, and then other times when there are no ultimates available, it seems like Laboratory just the first ones to hit the aggressive button, and Seeds sometimes will dive in, and just these different looks as far as how Laboratory will open up fights has really kept Zoo on their heels so far.
You have like different strategies that they're happy to run, right? Like they're so comfortable trying out different things. Granted, some aspects of the game very much feel like it's just a case of get the picks and hope for the best. But both teams are playing certain strategies that are working. This isn't completely like dreadful from either team, but I think Laboratory are just playing the game and they're really forcing resources out of Zenith of Optimism a lot more. So it means that they could almost pick their fights, right? So they just know to really start cooking Zenith of Optimism and just hope that the pressure builds up that they make a mistake. And that's what exactly has been happening time and time again. Both teams running Pharmacy, so this very much is a case of who can get the first pick first.
I'm excited to see this Sky Show taking on Zelda, and it will be actually Mello finding the Swift Strike through Ion's body, so the Ana being taken down, and now we've got a 6v5, but immediately demeched that shortly after was Vince, and now we've got that aerial battle coming through, and Sky Show will connect one, just narrowly able to miss the second, but the third will connect. Sky Show wins out the battle, and now a very big advantage favoring Laboratory in the damage department. If the Winston falls, it would be very catastrophic, as there will be not only one, but two, and what will look to be a third tick here on checkpoint A with a heap load of time to go a very short distance.
And that all started from the pressure coming in from Sky Show. And weirdly how Zenith of Optimism placed themselves on the high ground, Ian had to fall to the ground, and from there he was a dead man on Ana. And that is just a big mistake the Laboratory have been forcing out of Zenith of Optimism every single time, and they've very much punished them for it. Now they're going to take as much ground as they possibly can, build up the ultimates that they have ready. They just need a good barrage or a good Dragon Blade ready. Bins does lose the mech, so they have to be a bit more careful as they'd want to be, but they have a huge amount of ultimates ready to use on Zoo to try and win this map.
Cloudy will start things off for Zudo with the EMP, which will take down Mello just before he can engage with that blade, as you mentioned. Since trying to get back into spawn, will be able to get there successfully thanks to the nano grenade that would not only heal him up, but also a couple of team members that were getting low. And it will be stalled, at least for now, but again, I think Laboratory is fine with that, considering the fact that they did not have the nano boost at the time of that engagement that Zoo pushed in. Now they do, and going in, it will be popped, and looking for the Mercy up top, won't find it, and now re-engaging the back line. The sleep dart will just narrowly miss, and slashing through two is Mello, looking to escape with his life now. He's got a Mercy sitting with him, and with those kills, it looks like Lab will find a lot of area to push, although they do allow Lazy to get a resurrection on Ion. The barrage now being used mid-fight, and that'll be good enough for two, is looking for the last direct shot potentially onto Ion. It will hit. Now the Genji as well finding some of that explosive damage, and with that comes a team wipe, and what will be Lab finding that payload push, unless the Winston can touch, but not able to get there in time. Laboratory will take Numbani rather easily, essentially 1.5 to 1.
Really good ultimates right at the end there. I'm surprised that the Dragon Blade got the 2 picks that it did. It seemed that Milo had to just dive through the rest of like Zenith of Optimism, right, to be able to just sort of get a pick, and ended up getting both the Sombra and the Ana together whilst he was hacked, whilst he had all of this focus on him. I think he deflected asleep. So really well played to pull some out of the bag there, and then the barrage at the end just to clear up anybody else. Zoo look a bit more lost. It was a lot more one-sided on that map than it was on Lijiang, at least. But now that we're heading towards Assault, like, not to keep looking, oh, this is their opportunity, we have this next map, but I feel that like 2CP especially can open up some really interesting strategies and compositions that might suit them more. But really, they do look like on the back foot. Laboratory showing that they do have promise, and how well they can play when everything's going right for them.
Yeah, I think you hit that exactly on the head when it comes to when everything is going right. You know, they've flexed onto a number of different looks. As you see in the replay, we have Mello, again, just time and time again, finding himself in the back line. And even Sky Show defensively pulling out the Doomfist, able to help shoot down some of these bigger targets. And again, those finger guns, the hand cannon that came out nicely. And there is that midair shot from Sky Show. Really well found. Again, and you hit it on the head. I can't say it enough, Ryan. The fact that when things go right, things go very right for Lab. When things go wrong, they seem to stagger away. So as we get to Assault next, we'll see if they can continue to ride this momentum, or if Zoo can find a way to fight back to break things down and give a little bit of their insight and predictions. Let's send it over to the desk to break things down at halftime.
Thank you, iHold Shift and Ryan Central, for calling those first 2 matches. And Laboratory have added some wins to their win map differential. Zoo, unfortunately, still searching for that first map win throughout the series. But guys, we got to talk about Lijiang as our first map, and we talked a little bit about Mello on Laboratory at the start of the series, and now we actually seen the emergence of some other player on the Pharah, specifically Sky Show. Seemed to have a really good idea and understanding of his movement on Pharah. His missile targets were really, his missile positioning was really good. Valdemar, can you just break it down a little bit for me how well he was playing?
Sure. So, I mean, we saw it on Nambani there. He hit like, I think, 3 back-to-back, air shots where, the Winston's jumping up. He takes the duel, wins the duel, pressures the win. He's easily been a standout, and he has been throughout the entire season. Him on the Genji's been a kind of a boon for them, where they've looked a little middling, but Mello, even on Li Zhang, while he may have had a questionable Sombra performance on Night Market, where he was being a little bit too aggressive, solo EMPing in armored Zenyatta and taking a little bit of a misfire there. For the most part of his Zarya play was solid, and we did get to see Seeds on something other than the Hammond, which was fabulous for the 2 pushes that they ran it. It was a breath of fresh air, and then we were back to our regularly scheduled programming of Hammond in our faces.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was I think for everyone, it was kind of shocking to see Seeds, on that Reinhardt. We didn't really, he's usually just always going to play on that Hammond. And
it didn't even look bad.
No, it looked pretty, like, it was decent. He was keeping up alt charge with the other main take on the other side. But going into Numbani after that, we saw some compositions coming out from both teams. And Vals, you said something that really stuck with me. It says that Zoo has a composition that has a clear win condition, but they weren't really using that win condition to their advantage, were they?
Exactly. Running the Sombra, the Genji, and the Ana, you've got a very clear win condition of you Nano Blade, combine that with an EMP. There's nothing your opposition can really do. You've got to slice it through them like butter. We only saw them actually pull off that combination once, and it was in that final overtime push where they did eventually cap first point. Beforehand, they'd been using the Nano Blade, they'd been using the EMP, but it was a little bit all over the place, not actually having the combinations there. So when they actually play to their win conditions, they can be successful, they can win these team fights, and that's how that's how they actually cap the first point in the first place.
Yeah.
It's just having the discipline to hold on to your ultimates to set up those win conditions, not just thinking, sure, I don't have a nano boost, the EMP is still on 50%, I've got a blade, and there's a squishing in the back line, I'm going to win this fight, just watch me, and then just get shield bashed and killed. Having that little bit more patience I'd like to see from both SkyShow and Mello. And on the flip side, Clowny and Zelton, all these DPS kind of playing a little bit too aggressive, not waiting for their team. And sure, sometimes it's working, like SkyShow on the Farah with that burst damage, being able to play it pretty effectively. But a lot of the time, it's just falling flat on the face.
I think you stole the words right out of my mouth there. I think both of these teams just need to be more disciplined. Zoo specifically, you touched on it. They're going in, they get the pick, but they choose to invest a little bit more than they should have, and they're not playing necessarily to that EMP Nanoblade win condition that we saw them in their second round of ultimates. They actually did, and like you said, it worked. And the same thing happened with Laboratory, where they're, we want to play with Seeds on the Hammond, we want to play this Doomfist Genji, so there's like 2 avenues that you can kind of go and discover there. We can either take a very aggressive fight, which is pretty, straightforward, there's nothing too fancy there, or we can try and control the high ground, and it felt like SkyShow on the Doomfist just didn't have a consistent point A defense. He was either, sniping the Sombra, or he was just kind of getting dove a little too quickly, and he was mispositioning. I think just discipline overall and going back to the game plan. Hopefully that's what Coach Chen went in and said to Laboratory, but we'll see coming off from halftime.
Yeah, we will see if Laboratory is going to be able to take this series, get that 3rd victory, and march their way to their first series win throughout the series, or we'll see if Zoo can start their reverse sweep. We'll be back at you guys right after this break.
Welcome back, everybody. Al and I hold shift with Ryan Central. We'll be going into map 3, our assault map. But we'll be on Horizon Lunar Colony, which has been a battleground that we've seen a lot of very interesting things happen. We've seen games go pretty much all the way to like 8-7. We've seen games go 1-0. We've seen a lot of craziness. And to start things off, it will be Zenith Optimism on attack first and foremost, Ryan.
Seems that Sleep has come in for Zenith Optimism that run his triple spot and maybe they've just moved stuff around. It's really hard to tell. But Laboratory getting a pick straight away to Ian, who keeps dying so early in these fights. But I think Laboratory is showing their flexible skills. Mila now playing on the Farah, Skyshot, of course, back in the Doom Fist.
And Non-High will dive on in and actually take down Seeds. So all of a sudden, Zenith Optimism coming in with a lot of gas and a lot of fuel. Doomfist will be zoned away by Makoa. The rocket punch comes out, but it wasn't find any targets. And now looking at Recondense's laboratory as a tick and a half has been made as far as progress on the point. Although Winston falling low with no barrier project coming out, and now it will again be Mellow, this time on the far. Will be boosted, has the barrage, but will not use it as of yet. The EMP comes out, so not going to use it here either. Fortunately, the Mercy will still lock into the far to keep him alive, but that's only for a short amount of time before Sleep and Lazy do most of the work on that pharmacy combo. Jumping in would be the Winston of Zoo, and with that, Zenith Optimism will find a very successful first capture point A.
It seems that like Laboratory are always able to get the first pick but always lose the first fight. It seems to be somewhat of a pattern gun here, but it does count a lot more in the likes of 2CP and Assault than it would do in Hybrid or even Control. So they need to be careful that they don't get rolled here. So the Optimism was building up ultimate to use the Transcendence to keep people alive. And again, a sound barrier shortly afterwards, dedicated 2 support ultimates in very quick succession.
But if they can find a pick, it might just be worth it as the barrage was utilized from Lab as well as now the Valkyrie is midair. Seeds will jump on in with the pile driver, but he doesn't find much and has to be very careful as far as how he maneuvers. The translocate to get Cloudy out of dodge for a short amount of time. The Meteor Strike comes down, not able to find the full HP of Brigitte. You have to find her. Finally, Lazy gets taken down, but at what cost? You wish if you were Skystar, you could take it down quickly. Fortunately, the switch from Mellow onto the Tracer will allow him to take down Cloudy, so Lab, they will hold, but goodness, it was looking a little desperate for a couple of moments.
They didn't even get a tick, did Zeus, so that's a big loss on their part, but I feel dedicating both their support ultimates at the same time was the turning point for that engagement because they seem to have Laboratory on the back foot, and now Laboratory have a good amount of ultimates. The EMP is going to be ready soon on the side of Zoo. They have a rally that they might use to keep themselves alive, but Skyshow was just trying to get a pick, used every ultimate that he, well, not every ultimate, but every ability that he could get. The EMP comes in very early, and I don't know if Laboratory are going to be focused by this.
And the self-destruct was thrown a little bit too far to find any damage. The sound barrier not available yet as Zoo Sleep is very close to grabbing it. It doesn't look like they're even going to need it as Seeds will have to back away for the small moment. So if you can hold on to it, get it charged up, it would be that little mid-game contestant. Oh, the minefield went up, but oh, he does get it down. Fortunately, I wasn't sure if Cloudy got the hack off in time. Now the sound barrier mid-fight will allow them to find to try to find Seeds. The adaptive shield will keep him alive for a little bit longer than I believe Zoo wanted him to be up, but Skyshow again, only at 23 HP, has to dive on it with the Meteor Strike and will be immediately punished. Transcendence came out, like you mentioned, clutch, and Zoo will find the staggered kills. Mellow won't be able to touch, and they will find a very quick and convincing first 2 points here on Horizon.
Good solid amount of time using their ultimates there at the perfect position and keeping himself alive at the last split second. Just getting the picks really. No big ultimates were really dedicated like an EMP to completely clear them out. You did see right in the top right that the Diva Bomb managed to get picks right at the breadth, but they were able to find and follow to get the picks, and this composition seems to be really working. They don't have any DPS players other than Sombra, but she's just been able to sort of pick apart what Laboratory are trying to do into the back line, and from there they tend to fall apart quite a lot. So very different compositions to what we're used to. No doubt what we'll see later on from Team CC versus T1W, which is like the big game. This is very much both teams at the bottom just playing what they're good at instead of playing what's meta. And it seems to be working for the most part. Now Zoo is showing a good opportunity for them to take a map at least.
It's very bold call of you to say that playing what is meta, because if you were to go back and like a 5 weeks and 60 seconds just of like pictures of the compositions that have been played here in China, I don't even know if there would be a word in the dictionary that would be able to describe what has happened so far. It's been literally the Wild West out here, Ryan. We've seen a little bit of everything in these 5 weeks of China Contenders.
But when it counts, you see teams like Lingen and Team CC
Flag
and
as well.
T1W. Yeah, just all playing very tanky comps against teams that are in and around them just because they don't want to show off too much. They just want to make sure that they don't make any solid mistakes. But it seems that Laboratory and Zenith have sort of opened up their, like, they know who and where they are in this game, so they're just going to try and play what works for them. At least you see some very unconventional compositions coming out of Lab right now. They're really wanting to make the wrecking ball work, and they're going to be going in quite aggressively. Again, a lot of emphasis on Synths on the Lucio now that Meow is going to be on the Brigitte.
And they will find themselves moving towards the zero grav, Will Laboratory. It's a slow pace to move all the way through, and it could very well be choked off very quickly, but Zoo will allow them to sit out there. A couple of shots will be spammed in, and now we get our sound back as we get more out of the vacuum, coming right onto the back line, but Ian able to find a Discord Orb and immediately taking down a couple of damage orbs into Sky Show, which will take down him, and Mellow in the meantime had been hacked and taken away from Cloudy. So with that, Laboratory has lost a lot of their burst damage potential, and it will be Zenith Optimism holding very convincingly on that first offer from the side of Lab.
And they lost a good amount of time too, where they just sort of went on this flank going into the nether regions of space, and then getting picked as soon as he tried to jump on Laboratory. About a minute wasted though, so there's still a lot of time for Lab to do some pretty neat stuff, especially when you have ultimates coming online. But Cloudy is almost ready to have an EMP. He's got it now, so he's got it for this next engagement. Very much wants to use it and stop Lab in their tracks.
And Nanhai actually was sitting with the pilot diva form for quite some time to help out with the DPSs to poke away. And speaking of poke, how about Sky Show switching back over to what had worked in the first two maps? So at least the first one specifically, the EMP comes out. It will find the mid-air Sky Show, and while in mid-air, he'll track him down. Mellow, though, will find a Swift Strike to try to even things back out, but too much damage has been dealt so far for Zoo. A very good engagement from Cloudy. All they use is the EMP, and once again, a lot of time has been left off the clock for Lab to get this first point.
Really smart EMP. I think Sky Show did, telegraph himself where he was by just spamming the rocket, so it was quite easy for Cloudy to just sort of throw his EMP a little bit higher into the air, manages to get near on everyone, and now there's still a good portion of ultimates for both sides. It's a big ask for Milo, who has the Dragon Blade ready, but it's kind of a case of who he goes for. Brigitte is on A and watch at this point, very much just going to be focused on healing and protecting him, but he's going to try the Dragon Blade soon. Nevertheless, he's going on this flank. He wants to use it.
Oh, but Seeds is again first one taken away, so without that Winston being there, there's not a lot of follow-up on the Dragon Blade, so it looks like Laboratory will maybe look for another pick, won't get it as Mila does get taken down, and Cloudy will find a lingering hack on the bin, so will be DMAC'd and surely eliminated shortly after. And once again, now all of a sudden, Zoo looking super strong here on Horizon. This does not look like the same team from the first two maps.
This seems to be the area that they really suit. Like, who'd have thought it? Like, this is a team that's lost every single one of their maps, I believe, or one of them managed to get a pickup. Yeah, Lab managed to get one win against TSL, but it was only a map win. Both teams have lost all their matches, so this might be the first map that Zenith of Optimism are able to take. Never mind be able to take a match, but this might be just enough to sort of bring them in. Dragon Blade is still ready on the side of Lab. They do have ultimates to use, and they're going to use them now.
Oh, and we'll slap through Lazy before he can get himself a shield bash to try to stun out Mellow for as long as possible. That's all that will be found on the back end. So can Zoo find a way to counter back? They've already taken on Meow, and Nanhai has found himself a DMAC plus a kill in the Milo. Sky Show running for his life. The Winston hot on his heels. Will be able to find him as Cloudy. And now just one more player left to eliminate, and that would be Seeds. And the DMAX Diva will also fall before they can get remixed. So now just 25 seconds left, Ryan. This is, again, there's not much to be used here. They're going to have a Primal Rage and a Valkyrie, but Sky Show has switched over to a McCree last second. Not exactly your traditional desperate time switch to have a hero to contest point, but we'll see how this one plays out.
They're trying to shut down Cloudy. They're trying to be very much anti-dive to make sure that Cloudy can spam up another EMP. They might not be quite sure his progression on it, so they're just going to do their best to keep themselves alive, but they're taking so much damage on their way to the point as they trickle into overtime.
Cole will be put in the Primal Rage, as it will be a 6-on-4 favoring the side of Lab. And the Winston also very low, trying to track down this McCree, who was able to combat dodge roll a little bit further out of the line of sight that Cole wanted. And it looked a little strange, but Sky Show already at 90% of his ultimate shows that he did have a big impact on this take. And in overtime, it will be taken away, so we'll be seeing another 4 minutes added to the clock.
He managed to get the pick up to sleep. He was playing Lucio very early on, and from there, a good amount of the healing was lost for Zenith of Optimism. They still do a better time, regardless of where Laboratory finish now, if at all. And they have a high noon coming up fairly soon too, so Laboratory's showing their flexibility and how it's sort of working here. They're able to just try and push on some point and use their CC abilities make sure that Cloudy can't do much. But there isn't much to be said when it comes to an EMP. There's very little that you can do in that case. So playing this very compact, close together composition might be their downfall.
Cloudy does get an EMP off just before she was eliminated from the fight, and it won't be enough to take down Seeds, who was low and could not get himself back to full HP. The self-destruct being thrown into this hydroponics lab will only zone Laboratory out of that cover and come back in. Now the high noon will be used, but just able to escape behind cover was Sleep, who you are now seeing the perspective of on this Ana. The nano grenade coming in won't actually find anything. The Transcendence also being used from Ian, and that'll be enough to at least sustain a little bit of this defense, as it was a 5-on-5 for most of it. Winston will jump up to the high ground looking for potentially a Primal Rage, but he'll realize very quickly there's no need for it here.
No, not at all. They're very much in control. They don't really have any ultimates other than the Primal Rage ready, but to be fair, at this point, they don't really need it, and Nano Boost might be just enough to put on the Winston, but again, you can see where Laboratory coming from. They're going to be a bit slower. They have a Transcendence, and it might be forced up right now.
Well, both Winstons in the Primal Rage, and both of them also very low. Mako will get himself healed up, and now wants to dig on in, but a self-destruct will zone away the point. It will come down, and a little bit of a shield stun came from Milo. A takedown lazy from the self-destruct. Fortunately, there was enough damage still being funneled by Zoo, as they're able to take down 3, make that 4. Sky Show falling away. The D-Mac also coming in on the bins, who will be the last player to contest, and it'll just be staggering out the Pilot Diva for as long as possible before they eliminate. And a lot of time off the clock and a lot of valuable time as we're reaching close to the 2-minute mark.
Makuo doing a really good job to stay alive in a situation where he went down to very low health and was focused a lot. It just seemed that Zoo, well, Laboratory kind of forgot about him to an extent. So now the defending team have ult advantage. They have a good amount to use, and making use of these ultimates to get them very quickly. So able to rotate them in a high tempo. Laboratory just taking a little bit longer than usual, but they have to set themselves up for every single fight as they are now. And Zenith of Optimism are just not going to let that happen.
Trying to rotate through the hydroponics labs with the rally. A lot of armor being used. High noon coming out, holding it until about 1:30 in the afternoon. Won't find any targets. Self-destruct will be coming in. EMP as well. This could be really bad. 8-ball quarter pocket. It will at least force Lab out of their cover, which will be enough for Lazy Mako to find 2 kills on the 2 very valuable targets. The micro missiles will do the job to finish off Seeds, and with that comes another very solid sustained hold from Zoo. And again, the self-destruct isn't finding the kills when Lab comes through, but it's forcing them out of that cover, and Lab does not have the mobility to really stay together while that happens. So Zoo able to very well punish that mispositioning that they're forcing.
Mako has shown some real high potential on Winston, at least, just being able to pounce on targets that are in very bad situations. He's able to capitalize off of that. So really well played from the tanks as a whole. As you said, it didn't get any picks, but Nanhai and Makuo were able to really split Laboratory and put a lot of pressure onto the supports that they're running. And Milo on the Brigitte can't really do much in this case. Skyshow now switching over to Zarya. With only 40 seconds left on the clock, I don't know if he's going to get a grab or not in this time.
Mako does have the Primal Rage, waiting to see where he will use it. He's just focused on the Brigitte, and will actually zone him away from the Mega Health back as well. So coming in, it will be a little bit of extra health to sustain. The Transcendence was forced from Laboratory. What else can they potentially use? The Rally gets popped as well. Self-destruct won't find anything. Now at last desperation seconds, as we're down to about 18 seconds. The Sound Barrier also being used, and Laboratory will find the opening, at least D-Mech on the non-high. Mako also very low. The Winston gets taken down, and Laboratory with the kills will be able to find themselves finally some numbers, and they're in a position to potentially take this. Someone's going to have to touch, but there's no big bodies left for Zoo. The EMP comes out. Cloudy will touch it for a small amount of time, but that won't result in much, as it will draw up 2-2. But again, just around the overtime mark was Lab to capture that second point.
Just in the right sort of opportunity, really. They sort of made it for themselves out of nothing, but it does mean that they're playing for a draw, and there's 4 minutes and 44 seconds left for Zenith of Optimism to win a map, to get 1/3 onto the first point of Horizon Lunar Colony and take the win. So that's a big ask. Well, it's not so much a big ask, but I still feel that this is draw written all over it. But saying that, Zenith of Optimism have looked so much stronger in Horizon Lunar Colony than we've ever seen, to be fair. There's been a couple of close occasions, I'd say, from different maps and different teams where they've looked the worst team in a matchup, but they've managed to pull out some amazing stuff on Horizon Lunar Colony, for example. This might just be that case. Zenith of Optimism are going to make themselves a good chance, and they must be optimistic that they'll be able to turn this around. I would love to see this go to a Game 5.
You know, if you were to just like Sunshine of the Spotless Mind me and these two teams, I would be sitting here saying that this is the first time I've ever seen this, that Zenith of Optimism has looked extremely solid. I'll play Jim Carrey. You can be Kate Winslet in that movie. And now with an opportunity to find their first map win, it's not just the fact that it would be a first map win. This would be a pretty convincing first map win. I mean, they're able to, again, keep Laboratory from capturing 2 in regular time, so this very well could read a 3-2 scoreline. And as you mentioned, a 4:45 time bank is nothing to sniff at. It's a significant amount of time.
Exactly, and they have the right composition to run this. It seems that whatever they're running here, which is like this weird, it's not even goats really, because you're missing so many of the elements, but just the triple support with the Sombra. It's very good at just peeling apart Laboratory, and already we're seeing how split they are. They've all dropped down to the low ground. Slowly but surely, Zarya, how is she going to get back up? Now she's on the low ground being hacked, and it forces like Laboratory just falling from the height like rafters, and Cloudy's still getting those picks. 1 Sombra versus 4 people, and she's tearing them apart.
Yeah, but fortunately, Laboratory is able to come back together, and we'll be able to find a couple of controlled kills to turn that aside. But you mentioned Cloudy was able to pull a lot of damage in for essentially free. And that will at least result in a significant amount of ultimate percentage, up to about 75%, just off the first less than minute that we've played so far.
So there's a good amount of time, but Cloudy's so close to having an EMP already. We're seeing Mikuo switching over to Reinhardt, so very much an iteration, different variation of the strategy that they're running. I'll be interested to see how it works. But it's very much a case of Laboratory on the high ground. They have so many heroes that can't make it back up with any ease. Brigitte, the Zenyatta, the Zarya especially. But it seems so want to hit the ground, but Sid's going down so early is a huge loss. Zenith of Optimism are not going to miss this chance.
Mako on the Reinhardt will just sit on point, let the shield stay up, and looking for a D-Nick as well. The EMP does come out very early. The rally also being popped from Zoo, and they're finding a lot of eliminations in the back end of it. Really good conversion, and with that, there will be the first tick. Zenith of Optimism, and how about that for your first map? It took you 5 weeks, but it looked good to do it. Finally, Zoo finding their first map win.
Zenith of Optimism winning a map for the first time this season. If that's not, worthy of some PogChamps, I don't know what is at this point, but it does give them a leg to stand on when it comes to being able to switch this one around.
Right.
This is Free Fall's old team isn't on there anymore, but they're well on their way to maybe even taking a win here. But Laboratory still 2-1 so it is a big ask. And then we'll go to a map style that's very similar to Hybrid, right? You have a payload, you have to move it along. And Laboratory looks so good in comparison on the Barney. So you would maybe assume that it could be the same sort of there. So feel that Laboratory still have the edge here, but Zoo managed to get a map win, and they looked very strong on Horizon just then.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, you're also going into what will be Lab's map choice on a mode that will likely favor them. So again, we have to paint a little bit of a darker picture, but silver linings, and that's what you like to see out of the boys from Zoo. Again, it took a while, but at least it came in Flourish style, and we'll take a look back at some of these replays. Cloudy, again, you mentioned it. He was for free for so long, and these were just a couple of his plays that he had, finding clutch hacks, but most importantly, finding a lot of damage, even avoiding the Doomfist there with the translocate. Just really smart play. There's that EMP that able to track on down while he's falling. A little bit of low gravity play for him as finds a lot of extra damage. And we mentioned it before, Makoa had not had a big impact previously on these frontliners, especially going up against the likes of Seeds, but he also came to play this time around on Horizon.
Exactly, and I think up until now it's very much been Milo and Sky Show as the DPS being able to work together in such a fashion and have that synergy that it works, but this was the Cloudy show. Like, you feel that the whole composition that Zoo are running is to make sure that Cloudy has as much support as possible and can get as much done, and from there it just felt like Zoo had much better opportunities, whereas Lab so far has just been the synergy between the DPS and the heroes that they can cover. This time, though, didn't really work in their favor, but they do want to change that up on PRS Scope, which is coming very soon.
Well, we very well could see a map 5 still. We don't want to discredit anything after that performance from Zoo. Ryan shakes his head with maybe a little bit of, there's no way that's going to happen. We'll find out, though, as we go. Chapter 4 of this story will be written right after this break. We'll be back in just a bit. Welcome back, everybody, as we continue to unfold this story in front of us. I'm Alan I Hold Shift, your primary narrator, and our subconscious and subtitler will be the boy, Ryan Central. I don't know where that analogy came from, by the way, Ryan. I just decided to go for it. I hope you liked it.
I don't mind it at all, really, to be honest, but I'm interested to see that we're going to rate 66. DPS has formed themselves here on this map, at least in China and in other regions too. But I am interested to see what the two bottom teams of Group A do with that opportunity, whether they decide to run quad DPS or something similar. And looking at it real quick, it seems to be that there's no main tank on the side of Lab, but to be fair, they are still in spawn. Mikuo is still going to be on Winston, Cloudy is still going to be on Sombra. It seems that Zoo are still running that composition that worked so well for them on Horizon. Lab actually have a substitution. Seeds has been brought out and Light's been brought in, so it does look like they are going to be running a composition with no main tank.
This will be exciting, if not that. It might be a little sloppy, but exhilarating sloppiness is still good in my book. As you see, Milo will actually be scouting the right-hand side, respectively behind the billboard, and scout out that there is an Ana in the play, and will actually be tagged by said Ana. But first blood will be on to Sleep, so the scout is good, finding the Ana sitting way in the backline with Sky Show, and now a 6-on-5 situation, and it looks like Sleep is asking for a pause, and that's exactly what we will get. So I just got to get your initial take. Last week, Ryan, if you remember back, I'm sure you do, because how could we forget? We saw that quad DPS setup on defense with a Hanzo, a Widow, there was a Pharah in play, and a Soldier, right? And now we're looking at a quad DPS, or at least a DPS heavy setup for the offense, and so far it's panned out to be pretty exciting and successful.
Very much so. It's a composition that I think works a lot on Route 66, and I do think they works in certain other areas that just maybe players aren't confident enough to try out just yet. It's just because it's so open. You have like amazing sightlines on most of the points for Route 66 that you can take advantage of. And just little perches of high ground, especially if the other team is wanting to run tank comps like goats, they can't get up onto the top of big L's. So you just stand up there and just shill in damage for free. And if they want to run a Winston or D.Va, it splits up their composition quite a lot. So there's going to be a pause, not quite sure what is up, but it was Sue that asked for it. But they have come out the spawn doors with a pick, and they're starting to put a lot of pressure onto the backline of Lab, who right now need to decide what they're going to do against this kind of comp. It's weird. Triple DPS without a main tank is very interesting, and I'm very excited to see what happens here.
A very volatile environment, but again, we don't know exactly what the issue is for Sleep, as he was. Maybe it's the fact that he was first blooded. He's like, you know what? Pause. I don't want to see this happen again.
Raging, just like throwing everything off his PC and stuff. He needs a second.
It needs a second. That's the tech issue, is the fact that everything is destroyed. We'll be back in just a moment. We'll send to a quick break screen. We'll continue on with our fourth map of Escort just after this. And back we are, and it looks like the tactical pause, well, maybe not so tactical, will be extended away, and now it will be Zenith of Optimism finding a way to try to recontest, as again, Sky Show completely eliminates one full route while being midair, and now returning back, finds Ian again, and these early picks under the support are so crippling for Zoo. Lab being absolutely punishing, Sky Show hitting a lot of long-range rockets, looking for another elimination on the Sleep if at all possible. At the least, it's keeping him very uncomfortable. Now trying to train the focus back to the front line, as Mako will be taken away, and now Liar, again, the sub-in for the side of Lab, will look to penetrate through that front line, and there will be eliminations by the handful, as Laboratory will find the first stage checkpoint.
They're able to win this one out in very quick succession. Good amount of time on the payload, still just over 5 minutes to keep it moving, and ult economy is very much in Lab's favor. Zoo don't really have much worked on at the moment, and EMP is going to be tricky to sort of manage. But for Farrett in the sky, again, G dashing around, and Milo is going to be skulking around the Sombra. It's going to be difficult to get that all to work together. So this very much does split apart Zoo, what they are trying to do. And the EMP coming in aggressively with a blade is going to finish up this fight near on instantly.
The Blade White didn't have the legs to get through. No Swift Strike reset. Will be able to at least take down Sleep before he fell. And regardless, there was enough damage being funneled in from other sources. Yeah. Oh, and Sleep did survive. You're not wrong. I thought he was for sure dead. Now he's taken away. I couldn't actually. I thought for sure after the deflect came through that it was going to be taken away. But switch perspectives, and SkyShow will eventually make me sound at least marginally correct. Is Zenith of Optimism finding very little success defensively once again, but now they will be able to recontest potentially before the second checkpoint with a number of ultimates.
And they have Barrage, which is going to be good for these doorways. It's just a case of SkyShow working out which direction to come in from, but straight away the tanks are going to be caught out there. They're going to go aggressive. The Nanobus goes onto a Diva and an EMP to follow. Doesn't get the Transcendence though, that's huge.
Big question marks for me as well when that Nano Boost came through. The Barrage will at least take down Cloudy, but there are trades happening, and most notably the Pharmacy combination for Laboratory has been taken out of the sky. Now trying to send a self-destruct of their own. Will be Lab, it'll just land on top of the payload very gingerly. And Liar looking for some long-range shurikens will not be able to contest with too many bodies in front of him. So it will be a little bit of a stalled out push for the meantime as Zenith of Optimism has been finding a little bit of success here on defense.
Going to do his best, and Zoo have done a really good job being able to stop the payload here. A lot of ultimates were used very quickly, very scattered, didn't really get the follow-up picks that they were dreaming of, but they were able to stop this payload. They do have a Transcendence in case they need it. Now Cloudy's on the McCree, ready to try and take some stuff out the sky, add a bit more CC, but big ultimates on Lab's side, and they've already started the fight with a pick and a D-Mech, so they might not even need the Dragon Blade at this rate, but they have it available.
And the Resurrection defines Since. The IM will be forced to use the Transcendence just to keep the last 5 players alive. The EMP and Blade combination comes through again, and this one is much more successful. Liar finding himself 3, wants to find 4, will be flashbanged. Doesn't make a difference. Milo will clean up the rest of the scrap, and the 2 kind of flanking heroes will find all the success on that attack from Lab.
That just all seemed to build up, and you don't see many of those kind of Dragon Blades anymore. Granted, the EMP made it much more readily available, but 4 minutes still left on the clock for Laboratory to keep moving this payload. Granted, this composition might start to fall apart a little bit here. You see Zenith of Optimism switching up their comp. You would assume that Makua will go over to Reinhardt to make it a little bit more strong in this very narrow chokeway. So it is a case of like Laboratory. SkyShow maybe sort of clipped his wings a little bit, might be looking to change once that barrage does get used, of course.
And it comes down to what can they use to enable SkyShow to use that barrage. It is a very difficult area to find success with it, and you don't want to just throw it out to throw it out. You want to at least find at least a couple of picks, give your team a chance to find some successful payload push. But Cloudy will get the D-Mech onto his counterpart of non-high, and that will slow things down a little bit for the side of Laboratory. Now the barrage does come out to at least take down the Winston, who may have been looking to use the Primal Rage. He will be denied that opportunity, at least for the meantime. And now SkyShow again funneling a lot of damage forward. Do you get aggressive here? You've got 65, you've got the Winston down, but the rally is popped for Zoo. And now an opportunity to potentially soak up that armor for a little bit longer, but SkyShow doing a very good job. And though Milo comes in looking for an EMP, does not time it right, and the Blade is also used for Liar, so, choking a little bit early on that call. And that was a very awkward moment for Liar, who was like, wait a second, everybody is still able to use their abilities, and that will force Lab back out.
Really good Transcendence though coming out of AN. Granted, it was easily telegraphed because he just saw Melo sort of awkwardly run in and was like, oh, I don't actually have my ultimate, I can't EMP. So he used his Transcendence, but I think Liar following up with a Dragon Blade was a big mistake. But there are a lot of ultimates on Zeus side now. The Graviton is going to keep them at bay. There is a Diva Bomb coming in, so they need to be careful that they don't get picked. EMP also used, doesn't get anything though. Zoo looking on top for the first time this map.
A lot of very critical mistakes being pulled here from Lab. Milo makes the call that he's got EMP for the first engagement. Liar says, all right, I'm going to Blade. EMP doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden, in what was essentially a 2v6, Milo will try to EMP with a self-destruct combo, and it finds absolutely nothing. So Laboratory now vastly down in the ultimate economy, and with only 1:50 left, it's going to take a while for them to find some success to get this payload to move again.
Yeah, it's an interesting competition to sort of see coming out of Nanhai and the rest of Zoo. Like it's very straightforward for them, but looking at Lab, look at the just look at the composition whilst we have a second. Like Doomfist, Genji, Sombra. If I told you that this was going to be a composition used in competitive Overwatch a year ago, you would have laughed at me. The grab's still ready. The hack does come in, meaning that Nanhai can't use it just yet. But right now, Laboratory still don't look like they're on top. The sound barrier does get dedicated, and now they're going to press on ahead.
Sound barrier plus the speed amping up just to get on forward and find a couple of eliminations, but only really able to find the Brigida. And, you know, you mentioned that if you were to tell you a year ago that this comp would be played, they'd laugh at you. I'm going to argue that you could still say that and likely continue to get laughed at. So I would just bite your tongue for the meantime, Ryan. We don't want to make you look too silly.
Not too silly. Hopefully not as silly as either one of these teams if they start to make mistakes, because it feels like it's just waiting to happen. The pressure is building up. Good amount of ultimate to use. The Doomfist coming in, going straight back out because he didn't follow up with pick. A lot of emphasis on Nanahide that does manage to use the Graviton and get the picks to follow.
You know, now that I'm looking back at this, in my mind, subconsciously, I'm feeling a little bit kind of subtly triggered, and I'm realizing why. This is a very interesting composition that typically I find in my arcade games when you're looking at random heroes. So maybe that has a little bit to do with some of the irkiness that we're feeling with only having the solo Zarya front line. Very interesting indeed.
It's the composition where you load into competitive and everybody picks these heroes straight away and you're left going, really? And then people eventually change. But in this case, no. But the EMP does come in with a nano-boosted Dragon Blade with so much dedicated from Laboratory. But the follow-up is there. Just the Lucio left to fight, but he's holding his own. Complete team wipe from Laboratory. This payload is going to go right to the end of overtime. Can Zoom manage to stop it just before we get there, though?
That kind of reminds me of when keeping it real goes wrong. The EMP that time is executed properly, but previously with Mila not quite having it, you could see very quickly how it can flop. So now an opportunity for Lab to move through. They do have a Graviton Surge plus a Meteor Strike, and coming in with that big combination will be SkyShow able to pop up one and takes down Lazy with the Rocket Punch, now looking for the win. Pardon me, the Reinhardt, and that will be another big elimination. Rocket Punch coming through onto the Diva, but will be shielded, so very full charge is not, not high, and he will eventually be taken down, and all of a sudden Laboratory will say no more nonsense. Well, they do this with nonsense. They say no more nonsense. They will get the push in overtime.
Really well played. The Graviton was there. There was a lot of ultimates used from Zoo to keep themselves in the fight, but SkyShow being able to get the pick onto Brigitte whilst in the air and just individually get those picks without dedicating an ultimate. He just comes in and manages to get everything that he needs. Really well played. Individual play coming out right at the end, but Zoo did well to completely negate like 4 minutes worth of time on that final point, right? They managed to completely take control of the map, and Laboratory were forced to make a lot of mistakes whilst they're at it too, so much so that they dedicated half of the ultimates that they had available to one fight and they managed to win it. So this is good for Zoo. This is still an opportunity for them to push on ahead, but they have to push through the whole of Route 66. And Laboratory do have a very weird composition that's going to be difficult for Zenith of Optimism to try and work out and play against.
So, I mean, I hate to put you on the spot like this, Ryan. If Lab comes out with the same comp, what do you play? Is there any one pick hero-wise that just absolutely shuts this down? I mean, it's only a solo Zarya after all. Would you just pick a Reinhardt and just find high-value Earth Shatters? I mean, what's the play?
I think the Sombra, for sure. Like, you always want a Sombra on your team just to be able to pick it apart. The Widowmaker's interesting coming out of Zoo. That might be good, sort of spotting out the flankers and stuff, and you're always going to be sat with it. Maybe they run that quad DPS, just a bit more long-range heroes running the far. It's a case of being able to shutter out SkyShow, being able to play a really solid individual performance. Thanks, Sly, for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So it's more of a case of like they're forcing Laboratory, now that they have a DPS player in for a main tank. This doesn't work for Lab, they can't really change. So it is very much a case, it seems that they're going to be coming out on a very traditional composition, but really it's a case of anything goes, and it's just trying to individually outperform the flankers that are coming in. Like, it's so glass cannony what Laboratory are running here, that there is a way to just break through this. Zoo looking to use like just attrition, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a pretty stark question being posed by Lab because of how around the map they can be using a Doomfist, a Genji, and a Sombra. It could very easily distract and keep Zenith of Optimism distracted, but they're doing a very good job of playing this together, letting this poke happen and saying, so what, as the first pick does come down on the Synths, and with that, the Winston will dive into that solo Zarya and zone her away for a short amount of time, and this payload is moving for absolutely free.
Oh yeah, of course it is. Like, it's just so good for Zoo that it's a case of Laboratory can't really find a pick onto anyone, because look how compact Zoo are going to be. It's a case of like the EMP might be quite scary when Milo gets it, but you know, Zoo are prepared for that. They know how it works. They know that that's almost their win condition in this case, but they're going to get a lot of damage in for free, scared away by a Doomfist because of course, but right now Laboratory just don't have a shield, so when it comes to sort of playing up against those comps head on, they really struggle. The flanker's fine, more of the subtle play, but if a team's just running at you, you have nothing.
The kind of just feels like for Lab, your only real team fight win condition going up against what the comp is for Zoo has to come in the back end of an EMP. Just keep them all from using abilities and then eventually just raw out DPS them, although SkyShow will not allow any action to occur here as he gets rocket whipped away. And that will leave a 6-on-5, and just look at this immediate call for Zoo to play aggressive. I mean, yeah, these two teams are out of the playoffs. You could argue that they're just having a little bit of fun, but Zoo is playing this very much so more traditionally, saying, well, hey, you guys have your fun. We want to get better. And it looks like that is indeed being the case as they're flexing onto a very standard comp, but finding a lot of success with it.
It's a case that Laboratory do have a good amount of ultimates now. They want to use them beforehand. You can see the Sombra very subtly in the doorway trying to get a pick. Gets onto A before the EMP's even dedicated. So, does dedicate the EMP, but Samurai keeps the rest of Zenith of Optimism alive. Big ultimates dedicated from Lab. Not quite the follow-up just yet.
Oh, but a double Meteor Strike will connect onto both of the two of the three, rather, support line. And with a Zarya nearly full charge around, it looks like on the back end of it, unless SkyShow gets taken down, which he will. It was potential to maybe hold that for at least a little bit of a stagger to allow some members to come back. But with those kills, Liar will be taken down pretty quickly. And now with the Transcendence being popped for Zoo, they want to say no more nonsense. Let's get through the second stage. And they will get there pretty successfully with a lot of time to finish the third point.
I think definitely more time than the Laboratory had on this third point, and this strategy is going to look even worse for Lab when it comes to a very tight choke area. Nanhai is going to push on ahead, has a Graviton, hasn't had the reason to use it just yet, and good ultimates, like Zenith of Optimism just outlasted Lab there. There was some really solid ultimates that were used from Laboratory, pretty much everything aggressive that they had, you know, EMP, Dragon Blade, the Grav, I think, at some point, and then also, well, not a Grav, sorry, but they used the Meteor Strike to get everybody coming together and to get picks. I'm sure there was a Grav, maybe it was deflected, I'm not quite sure, but there's some big questions, and again, good use of the Grav here.
And able to take down SkyShow routinely first, and now Bin's being demacked will be followed up at a full charge Nanhai, who is continuing to move forward. Makoa is saying, let's just put this one away here, let's give ourselves as much time as possible. The Primal Rage comes out to find the last bit of support that was trying to get back into spawn, and now just zoning everything away. I don't even think anyone's gonna be able to touch this in time. Oh, just narrowly. Bins will find himself in proximity to do so. EMP comes through, but Milo will not be able to find much besides just Iron. There are still enough big bodies here, and that's the biggest thing, is that with a dedicated front line, Zoo is just able to sit on point for a very long amount of time. A double uppercut will come in for SkyShow, now finding a little bit of effectiveness. The Meteor Strike, but he has to come down immediately. Will be able to find a headshot with that hand cannon. Is continuing to dance vertically on top of the payload, and it looks like in the nick of time, off the backhand of a lot of play from the backhand of the Doomfist, there will be, at least for momentarily, a sustained defense.
Really good individual play coming out of SkyShow there to keep themselves in it. It did look a bit lackluster. The EMP coming in at the right time for Milo. Again, Ayan dying straight away on this Zenyatta because of it. It seems that it's so well executed that Aiden can't do much about it. But Zoo are doing a really good job of just trying to keep themselves in fights. But SkyShow going down early, completely missing the engagement. Might just be it. This might be their opportunity in open window.
Blade comes through, enough damage to help Milo find the kill into Ayan, but again, Lazy just backpedals a little bit, finds enough damage to take down Liar, and will survive. The self-destruct comes in, but most of it has been blocked by the Winston bubble. Now one of their own for Zoo, and they're able to find a pick on a SkyShow who tried to recontest. Milo needs to get in to use possibly an EMP, will drop it, it will find a lot of members, but there's just not enough health pool here. Liar's gonna switch onto a Reaper to try to find some extra damage into targets, I guess the Winston, but this is Zoo is not messing around. They don't want to play this one for fun. They want to get the W as much as possible and send it to a game 5. And so far, they're on the way of doing that as we are drawn up at 3.
2 minutes and 38 seconds. It could have been about like 4 if it wasn't for that final engagement that came out of Milo and SkyShow right towards the end of the fight before this one. But that's still a good amount of time. They get an extra minute, of course, because there's no draw mechanic in this. It really is all or nothing for Zoo to turn this one around. They need to make sure that Lab don't come out of the spawn doors with some nasty surprise that means that the payload will continue moving forward in overtime. They want to shut this one down straight away. And it seems that now they're starting to play meta much more conservatively. And this really crazy strategy from Laboratory without a main tank, it's like a big question mark because they brought out a main tank player in space for another DPS. It is really much a case of like they went all or nothing on this, and it might just backfire against them.
Well, Zoo looks like they want to come out of spawn with the same setup. I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we will get a different look potentially from Lab as they at least are offering us the potential of a pirate ship comp with an Orisa and a pardon me, a Bastion highlighted, but we'll see if that actually comes out of spawn. And I mean, again, you know, Lab, okay, fine, have your fun. It's the last week, you're out of the playoffs, but I like the fact that Zoo is sitting here trying to improve. You know, at the point, you know, I think the analyst desk has hit on it, the fact that there have not been any very standout performers. Make an argument for yourself. Play well, get a chance to make sure you stay in the Contenders rosters in one form or another, and Zuda's taking a very no-nonsense approach.
Bastion on the payload. This might be like hell on earth for Zoo here. They have very much had to back up, but they can't let this happen, actually. Played aggressively here is a good idea. But straight away take up Milo. That was perfect. They knew that they couldn't leave the Bastion to do what he wanted. They had to play aggressively and have already shut it down.
And there will be a little bit of return fire from Lab, but again, you mentioned it, taking the Bastion down immediately has actually already forced Laboratory to reconsider how they want to set this one up. They will find some success with the payload, but it wasn't without a little bit of resistance. So now Zoo looking to set themselves back up defensively. Have to get these numbers back from spawn. A long way to walk here, Ryan, to get back onto Big Earls.
And now it's going to be really difficult to move this Bastion off of this payload. He's just trying to get comfy, like fluffing up his payload, trying to work out where exactly he wants to sit on. Just sit down, Bastion, just sit down. But like now Zoo have a lot of difficult responses to this, but the Brigida's not scared. She's just running straight at him.
I love it. I absolutely love it. The Winston follows up. Hilo and Sky Show taken down, and what was a very cheeky strategy from Lab will be met with a lot of resistance. And Zenith of Optimism again looked very solid, and with this overtime already here, the Primal Rage will be used to keep Brigida away, and a very successful hold from Zoo against what was again a very cheesy look from Lab, but they handled it well.
They had to think on the spot, right? They were in sort of a weird area because they'd sat right close to the payload. As soon as Sebastian came out, they backed up, and then immediately knew that if they backed up, they were just creating space and momentum for Lab to push out a payload with this. So now it's a case of getting around this corner with just under 4 minutes left on the point. Zenith of Optimism, they just took their first map. This might be their redemption story if they can sort of take this on ahead. But I will be interested to see what both of these teams play on the different sides that they just played on.
So what will come out, I think, is the question. Does Lab continue to have a little bit of fun, or will they actually make an attempt to hold this for what is, as you mentioned, essentially 4 minutes? I mean, who knows? Maybe this is some backhanded strategy that Lab's like, all right, we'll throw the first 3/4 of the map just to give us some practice in a much more dire situation, which, again, to be fair, this is a situation they found themselves in routinely throughout Contenders, but we'll see if that's the case. Maybe a little bit of wishful thinking on my part.
Potentially, but you're sort of looking in the areas. So we're looking back to the control map, which is what we would go to if there is a map 5.
Yeah.
It was very, very close. Like, to the depth, both of these teams really played their hearts out, and it was very, very close. Numbani was very much one-sided to Laboratory. Horizon Lunar Colony was very much one-sided to Zenith of Optimism. Now Zenith of Optimism looking a lot stronger here now too. So if this goes to the end, then this is going to be one of the closest maps that we've seen, because both these teams have been performing so well against one another, not against other teams, mind, but still a lot of mistakes that both teams can and can't punish here.
Well, Laboratory will be coming out with a solo Diva front line with a triple DPS behind an Ana and a Mercy. A lot of damage being funneled in, but no eliminations as of yet. Liar moving from left to right, trying to keep Zenith of Optimism looking and searching for this Genji. Sky Show mid-air, meanwhile, will find a lot of damage, but again, there has not been any kills, and eventually you need to find a way to contest as the payload is already coming very close, and with the kills going the way of Zenith of Optimism, it looks like this one will touch point. Liar's going to give it a go to sit on point for a little bit longer, but how long can he actually feasibly sustain against the Brigida and all this other damage coming out from what is a stationary planet? Sorry, the answer is not very long, and we will be going to a map 5, Ryan, and we will likely see again how this
these teams really wanted to push to the end. These are the two worst teams in Group A if you're looking at the league tables at least. But this is like both teams have been sort of relegated to trials for next season, won't be making playoffs. But this is a case of pride for both of these teams that have lost all of their matches so far. Zoo never won a map. Now have just won 2 in a row. Can I make it free for the amazing reverse sweep? I cannot wait to see this map.
And you know, at the end of the day, even if you know, for the average person who pays attention to Contenders, they might not watch all of these matches, but they will likely go back and check the stat lines. And not finishing with 0 match wins you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder there. You don't want to go winless in the entire Contenders, and Zoo looking like that no-nonsense approach. We will be heading to that map 5 decider here in a bit, as we do have a couple of shots on screen of the replays that were in hand. But we will, again, I mean, a lot of interesting moments from both teams. Liar with a couple of huge blades, Skyshow with a couple of great plays. With the Doomfist, it just comes up a little bit short simply because, again, of the fun that was being had for the side of Laboratory. So map 5 we will be going to here in just a moment, and it looks like we will be on I think it's Nepal, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so we will be there here in a little bit. We'll go to a quick break and come back to write the conclusion of this story just after this. well, we may not have been guessing or maybe even wanting to see a Game 5 initially from this, but we're going to get one anyways. The reverse comeback still alive on my hold shift. He's Ryan Central. And again, if you were to tell me that Zoo was winless, I would maybe not believe it based on what we've seen so far. It would be quite a story for them to pull out the reverse sweep for their first set win in China Contenders Season 3.
It'll be a sort of silver lining, as we pointed out. Both of these teams will not be going for playoffs, and thus will be going down to Contenders trials for China at least. So they are the weaker teams. You have stuff like Restart and Alter Ego in the other group, but I feel that both of these teams tend to be quite a lot worse. But we are here on Nepal. It's map 5. Some very interesting strategies coming out. Seeds in for Lai because, of course, they took out their main tank for a Genji, and it left Laboratory red-faced. Now they're playing very meta, as is Zoo playing a competition that, since they've been on it, has been much more successful.
And the Meow will be the one kind of scouting things from the third-person perspective while holding up that shield and a lot of patience, leaving Zoo a little bit confused on where Lab has set up. And now finally they will be offered an opportunity as they will dive right onto point. And all 6 players are here for Lab, but they're getting chewed pretty quickly. The health bar is fading very fast. Skyshrow most notably on the Lucio very low, but they will capture the point. Zoo not able to fully contest, and at some point you have to look for an early engagement, looking to get fully healthy. Now with Makoa on the backhand sided flank, Cloudy will be able to find the opening pick on a Synth, so a 6-on-5, Winston will jump up to stay alive, and with numbers, Zoo will contest and find success against Lab. This retake should be likely, but it comes at what cost is the biggest question. Rally already being popped for Zoo, actually as well. Lab able to find it at the exact same time. Transcendence trying for Zoo as they again want to try to find this point as fast as possible, but it's already up to about 30%, and there are still a couple of numbers here for Lab. The Graviton Surge coming up with the EMP immediately afterwards will keep everybody away from dealing damage. And now as Steeds comes back in as the Reinhardt, he will be one of the last players left and staggered away, but it was 40% for the side of Lab before this will get retaken for Zoo. So a marginal success on that first fight as you look at Lab's perspective.
Sort of happened previously in the other control map that we were looking at earlier. It just took so long for Zenith of Optimism to be able to take the point after getting the pick. So now is Cloudy running back to spawn, might be looking to change to Azaria to really complete this goats comp that they've been running. It's just so difficult. They need to really go head to head with Laboratory here and really need to find the comp. It does seem that they're still going to be on the Sombra though, so might be a case of just spotting out Wags. Maybe they went to the enemy spawn actually, to be fair. So now they're just trying to get picks, and Laboratory need to be careful here, but they just have to force themselves onto the point.
Sound barriers will be trade mid-fight, and just waiting for Seeds to find some kind of success off the Earthshatter. He will find a pin on the Lazy post-mortem after that Earthshatter did take place. And again, Lab just biding their time, finding a Shiki line of sight, and then just all diving onto point, forcing where they want to have this fight. Transcendence.
Why?
Ryan, no, that's not what you want to see. It was just him left alive, and it looks like they will at least survive for a small amount of time. But again, you mentioned it. Why do you use that there? And you need that for the potential retake. And now we're above 50% and counting for Lab.
It's a big ask now for Zenith of Optimism to turn this around. They do have an EMP up and coming, but it is a case of their comp is a little bit more meticulous, that they need to find the right pick, whereas Laboratory is just more brute force. But now we're seeing Mikul on the Reinhardt, but he's so behind in Earthshatter. Ult percentage, he needs to be careful he doesn't get taken out here. EMP does get used, but both teams trading.
And Seeds will fall just before that Earthshatter comes into play. Sins will use the Transcendence at last second, but you might wonder, is it too late? And again, these Transcendences, as you, I can see your reaction, just the question marks are funneling through your mind, and it will be a retake for Zoo. 78% is where it will stall out for Lab.
It was like a horror film. I just like ran into a Brigitte, like close range. That's not where you want to be, but he has found up another Transcendence fairly quickly, so we'll have it for this next solid engagement, as there is a grab on the table from Laboratory too, so perfectly timed. We're still seeing the Sombra working for Zoo, at least. The EMP was enough to keep them in it, but I think Lab just have so much like sheer horsepower. But that's a big Earthshatter.
Countered with one of their own is Lab, but the damage has already been done for the side of Zoo as they find the backline support of the Lucio Brigitte, and with that comes an extra charge for Non-High, and they will finish out Seeds. So now we're looking at potentially one more fight for Lab. It's going to have to be in a very extended situation, especially if this D.Va falls, but able to find Cloudy. So very much so worth it. Opportunity to push on in as Cloudy was getting closer to an EMP, not quite there. Non-high though, and the rest of Zoo will back up some time to play with, but they're not even going to contest. They're just going to let Lab take this. They want to engage with a full 6v6. I'm a little lost on why they wouldn't even at least bide their time on point.
They've got so many ultimate, that's why. But this could be like the biggest throw that we've seen in competitive Overwatch if this doesn't back up, because they gave the point for free. The Diva Bomb comes in with a grab, doesn't really get the picks, but Lazy does go down, so they don't have the Brigitte. It is very much a case Seeds gets grabbed on his own. And Lab might be able to take this.
Seed stays alive though is the biggest thing. The damage was just not there for Zoo, as there was a pin that came out for Makoo, but not going to make a difference. Laboratory comes in, and now you start to look at, why do you give that point up for free? Why not at least poke a little bit? And well, that's the result. It will still be another successful take for the boys of Lab at the last second, 100 to, I believe it was 97%. It's not quite the 100 to 99, but now we will move into the inner sanctuary, and we'll see how this second point unfolds.
This is very much a case of like, Team A, I made a huge mistake. Team B, hold my beer. Like, there's so many like questionable decisions that have been made. I understand the principle behind it from Zoo here, like the whole idea of, right, we've lost somebody, just give them the point. Don't give them any ult charge. We have 4 big ultimates, but it just never happened. It never ceased to be, and so much pressure was put onto themselves because there was so little time. If the enemy team is like 5% percentage on the point, then sure, you can give it up your time, but not when they're on like 88%, you know, like, so like Zoo need to really pull this back. They have the opportunity. They did it on Lijiang Tower, but this is such a big ask. Laboratory have put themselves ahead.
And Zoo are backing all the way up after seeing what Lab was coming with. Will they make changes? It looks like they will. There will be a Zarya, Reinhardt, and a Diva switch, so there will be running a more traditional Goats against, again, a traditional Goats, but Lab on point first and foremost. We'll just capture for free, saying, all right, thanks very much. We'll just sit here and bait out this fight for as long as possible, maybe find another 40% or more. Seeds finding a nice pin on the Lazy. That's a big pick as the Brigitte falls, and with that also came no support from Makoo, who on that Reinhardt again will be taken down, and Seeds immediately up to 62%. And again, just question marks are funneling through my head. I have no idea how to even approach what Zenith is trying to do. Again, the swaps are late. They're not fighting at all, and Lab is getting free capture percentage.
It's the easiest sort of 5th map that they can have right now. Like, it's give it to them. They can set themselves up. They can prime perfectly. Get picks onto Makoo, who isn't really getting the support. But these charges are just coming in for free from Seeds, and he's not being punished for it. The boot comes onto Makoo to shut it down, and yeah, this is falling apart from Zenith of Optimism. The reverse sweep hopes might be falling apart in front of our very eyes.
And again, no ultimates for Zoo in making switches. Sleep will be playing the Brigitte. Lazy will switch to the Lucio, so a little bit of a switch on who's playing what. But again, the Transcendence is really all that they're going to have. Maybe a grab if they can let this fight last a little bit longer, but Seeds has an Earth Shatter. Wants to just flash the shield and maybe bait out some shields of their own for Zoo, just holding it. Again, a lot of damage being funneled now. Finally, it comes through, and it's big. Will be booped away. And now it still doesn't make much of a difference. Milo and the rest of the crew would be pushed forward, and they'll find a full team wipe. And now we're going to be looking at likely... this is going to get down to the wire here. I mean, we're looking at 100-0 potentially if one more fight does not go the way of Zoo.
They need to be careful with the ultimates that they have. They have a grab and Transcendence, so Zenith of Optimism do have some reasons to remain optimistic, but they have thrown away more and worse ultimates in the past. Lab have so much lined up, ready and waiting, that they're going to use the grab and the Diva Bomb together to shut this one out. But players still staying alive. Makoo just go down, though.
The grab will be countered away, 93%. There is somebody from Zoo on point. That's what it looks of it. It's Lazy who's there, trying to find his way to get the sound wave to boop some players off, but won't be granted the luxury as overtime is here. It will fade away, and in very unclimactic fashion, Laboratory will win this one rather easily, 2-0 in map 5.
And they get their first map win. Zenith of Optimism remain winless. They managed to get some map wins at least, but man, they fell apart towards the end of Nepal there. It's really big mistakes. It was in their hands, right? It was completely in their hands, but they gave up the first point and then didn't really show up and sacked them at all. They found a strategy that seemed to fit them with the Sombra inserted into their triple support lineup, but everything else looks very much lackluster. Very close game for the two teams that are at the bottom of Group A at least, but in the end, it was Laboratory that came out on top.
A little bit of fun was had, I guess, is the biggest thing when it comes to Lab. Maybe just wanting a couple extra games on the Contenders screen, which maybe merits what happened in Game 4. But as you mentioned, it would be Lab finding themselves a 3-2 win. It wasn't without Zoo finding a little bit of success. They won't have a big old goose egg in front of the map total. But to try to break that down as best as possible, let's send it back to Kenobi and the gang on the desk.
Thanks, guys, for that cast, and I think we've got some good big brains here that can try and break down this as best as possible. I hope so. We got the Galaxy brains here, and I think Lab maybe wiping the sweat off their brow just a little bit, almost got very close to getting that reverse sweep, and Zoo made it difficult for them. We were sitting at halftime, kind of thinking, oh, this is done and dusted for Lab. This is easy. It's going to be a 4-0, and then Zoo kind of comes out, and they really just come out and punch Lab in the mouth. Definitely, you love to see it from teams like this. Really, when there's even not that much to play for, you're playing for pride, and they finally got that first map win. So gotta give a lot of credit here to Zoo, don't I, guys?
Oh yeah, easily. I mean, this is a team that you repeatedly said have looked out of their depths, and specifically on that last map on Sanctum, having the wherewithal to go back and swap to a better comp, and while their support may have been the characters may have needed swapping towards the end there, which kind of sealed the deal for Lab. That last round, I was kind of thoroughly impressed. I mean, we saw Seeds come out on Goats. We saw like Goats mirrors, which was like a kind of a breath of fresh air, honestly, from all like the crazy zany stuff that Route 66 tends to entail in China, where teams are just throwing everything but the kitchen sink at people. But it still makes sense, when we look at Route 66 and how those sightlines works, and how the metagame of people holding a little bit closer on spawn, running so many DPS makes some sense there. But for the most part, Zoo has looked improved, and as we continue on throughout the off season for Contenders China, or the regular season for Contenders just teams, I have to evaluate them a little bit differently, I think.
And let's take it all the way back, bring it all the way back to Horizon Lunar Colony, where they kind of really started to show their stuff and got their first map a win. We saw the subs. They subbed in one of their supports for one of their DPS, and we're playing a triple support comp, but not in the sense where you would play, the Brigitte and, Goats compositions. They were really running Cloudy on that Sombra and just running dive tanks with it. So, Vals, can you tell me a little bit about this decision to just have really 3 supports in the lineup?
I mean, it makes sense if you're going to be committed to the triple support look. You want people who are going to be comfortable on those triple supports. And I think it really did make a difference towards the end of the series, where we saw Sleep coming out under Lucio a little bit more, having someone who's got that comfort level on all 3 supports, and even having the ability to bring out the Ana Zen Brigitte combination we saw on the second point defense of Horizon, having players who... There's a huge difference between having a DPS player playing Ana and Zen, for example, than an actual Ana Zen player playing Ana and Zen, and that really made a difference. The Sombra, though, Cloudy looked a little bit hit and miss, struggled a little bit with the Sombra early on in the series, but definitely started to get his act together a little bit towards the end of it, and that's why we saw Zoo starting to get a little bit more competitive.
And so, speaking of Lab, we talked about it before. They looked very good in the first 2 games against this team of Zoo. But Volamel, what really happened with Lab, in Horizon Lunar Colony and with Route 66? They kind of brought out this triple DPS comp. Can you tell me a little bit about how Lab kind of just didn't seem like the same team they were in the first 2 games?
So Lab kind of lives and dies by Seeds. If Seeds is going to be this kind of fixture that wants to play Hammond when he can, it's a very comfort pick for him, that's fine. But then we look at Horizon, and we see them kind of misplay these dives, where I see Mello not following in his dive tanks and choosing to run around the staircase and then dash through the team. That was a very strange play, to say the least. I would have expected him to pull a blade there, or just dive with the tanks to try and burst the target, and that's kind of a composition that we're choosing to. And it kind of comes back to Nabani for me as well, where they have some clear game plans, but they just don't execute very well on either of them. They're kind of like trying to play in the middle, and that's the kind of big thing that I want to tie all the way back into what Val said at the beginning, is the discipline for these teams don't seem to be aligning, where we're trying to play these very fancy compositions where the stars have to align and we have to necessarily fight for these key locations. Let's wipe the board clean and play something that's a little bit more focused on foundations and for those fundamentals.
Yeah, I also think it also comes to outthinking yourself a little bit. The specific example you were giving about where Mello was trying to wrap around the back instead of actually diving with his tanks, the logic there is maybe The tanks are going to dive to high ground, so the supports are probably going to drop down. So if the Genji's there already waiting, you can play on supports easily. But it's just outthinking yourself, taking too many steps ahead when you do just want to bring it back to the basics. How can we win? What's the simplest way to win this fight rather than trying to come up with something fancy that might be posted on Reddit if you pull it off successfully? It's taking these 10% chances and then falling flat on their faces. And it was a common theme throughout the series for both teams.
Yeah, so one last thing before we get to our second match here is we talked about at the beginning, all the way back when we started, we talked about players that this is kind of a match for them to show their stuff. So who on either team really stood out for both of you?
There's a couple.
Yeah, one player I did actually want to highlight, unfortunately for the losing team, was Nanhai. Off-tank is one of those roles in China where you think about, you've got superstar DPS, you've got superstar main tanks. Off-tank, there's no real stars. It's one of the weaker roles we see throughout the region. Nanhai, I'm not saying he's going to be the next superstar at all, but he was definitely been a bright spot, not just today, but throughout the regular season for Zoo. So if I'm going to name anyone on Zoo to be coming back on a new team next season, on a better team and put better performances, I want to see Nanhai coming back. Has some great performances on both the Diva and Desire throughout the group stage. I'd like to see more of him.
I mean, Zuv overall has kind of slowly at least been a little bit more progressive. They've started to kind of hit the ground running, especially in that last map. I was actually quite impressed with the kind of in-game IQ to be able to go back and swap, and that was something I actually wish I would have seen more of throughout the regular season, because again, this is kind of, this is the last day, so it's disappointing to see that we couldn't have seen that. But again, we've got more tournaments in China, so I'm excited to see just the team of Zoo progress. But if I'm gonna pick anybody and not completely cop out, I'll say Sky Show. I think he really showed up today for Lab. I would love to see him on a team, funnily enough, like LGD. We added Wan Li. Shou Chang has been a little hit or miss. At least last week, actually yesterday, he did quite well. They're kind of hurting for a projectile player, so maybe even moving him to LGD might provide some benefits.
Well, we'll see what these two teams are going to be looking like as we progress in those players as well. But don't go anywhere. We are going to have a second match today, and we have a third one. Stick around for that third one. That third one is going to be a very good match. So we are going to be having Flag Gaming versus Alter Ego next. I Hold Shift will be at the host decks, leading the Vowels and Volamel connection into that second game. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.